John Kennedy stepped out of his dusty blue pickup truck and paused a moment in the parking lot of Master Kim's Martial Arts Academy. The late afternoon sun stretched shadows across the pavement as children's voices echoed faintly from inside. The sounds were familiar now, shouts of exertion, the dull thud of feet against mats, laughter mixed with discipline. It was a place he'd grown used to, a place his foster daughter had made her own. He adjusted his worn leather belt, straightened the collar of his soft plaid shirt, and closed the door gently behind him. A few of the younger kids outside paused their stretching as they saw him, pass offering a small wave. John returned it with a nod and a quiet smile. He was never loud, never one to command a room, but he had a way of being seen anyway. Inside, the air was thick with a scent of rubber mats, sweat, and old wooden floors that had soaked in years of hard work. He walked slowly, not because he had to, but because he liked to take things in. The parents' bench was partially full, with a few chatting quietly, eyes darting between phones and the class beyond the glass partition. John found an open seat near the edge and eased down carefully, his knees reminding him again of the years behind him. But the years had also given him something else, perspective. Across the mat, his 16-year-old foster daughter, Emily, was mid-practice. Her ponytail swung as she moved, striking forward with a focused, confident snap. Her white GI hugged her frame as her fists cut clean lines through the air, executing forms he barely understood, but admired deeply. John's hand moved to the inside pocket of his denim jacket, fingers curling around his phone out of habit. But he didn't unlock it. His eyes were on Emily. She didn't see him right away, and that was fine. He liked watching her like this, lost in something, committed to something. She hadn't always been that way. When she'd come into his care at 13, she was closed, off, angry, even, her words sharp, her trust harder than oak. But she'd taken to martial arts faster than he expected. Something about the structure, the control, maybe even the outlet, and over time she began to unfold. Not into someone new, but into who she was meant to be. A voice rang out sharply from across the mat, pulling him from thought. Higher kicks. Morales, I said higher. That's not even going to touch a toddler. It was his voice again. Tyler Garrison, head instructor. Black belt. Barely 30, but with a swagger that suggested he thought he invented karate. His crisp uniform barely creased as he moved, perfect folds, perfect posture. Too perfect. John narrowed his eyes slightly. Tyler was demonstrating a takedown, grabbing a student's wrist with a firm tug that made the boy stumble. He barked a correction and moved on, not noticing or not caring that the boy's face had flushed with embarrassment. John had seen Tyler before, not just in the dojo, but in life. The kind of man who valued control more than connection, discipline over dignity. He wasn't all bad, no, but he was the kind that confused authority with wisdom, and that always led to trouble eventually. A mother near John leaned to her friend and whispered just loud enough to hear, "He's strict, but my son advanced 2 belts this year. Can't argue with results." John didn't say a word. He just watched. Emily, for her part, didn't seem bothered. She was working in a smaller group, sparring softly, focused and light on her feet. Her instructor, one of the assistant teachers, was gentle and supportive. John leaned back slightly, letting the sounds and rhythm of the dojo fade into the background as he relaxed. But then, Mr. Kennedy, a cheerful voice broke through. Emily had spotted him. She ran over with that lopsided smile that only showed when she was genuinely happy. "You came early," she said, grabbing a towel from her bag and patting down her face. "I like seeing the show," he said, voice low and warm. "I'll be done in 10, she said. "We're just cooling down." "Take your time," he replied, I'll be right here. But then everything began to shift. Tyler's voice cut through the gym like a whip. All right, everyone. Before we call it a day, let's end with a fun little demo. The word fun didn't sound fun at all. It sounded loaded. Heavy. The energy in the room changed almost instantly. Some kids paused their stretching. Some parents leaned forward. Even the instructors looked uncertain. John's eyes tracked Tyler as he slowly walked the mat, his grin wide but wrong. Not friendly, performative. Tyler's gaze swept across the viewing area and then stopped. On John. A beat. Then, louder. Hey there, sir. You're Emily's foster dad, right? John stood slowly. That's me. Tyler stepped closer. Ever thought about getting on the mat yourself? Maybe showing us what you've got? Bit of fun before the weekend? John offered a tight smile. I'm a watcher, not much of a joiner. Oh, come on. Tyler chuckled, raising his voice just enough for everyone to hear. We've all watched those action movies and thought we had it in us, right? A few of the teens chuckled. Emily touched his arm. Dad, let's just go. But Tyler wasn't letting go. How about it? Quick, friendly spar. Nothing serious. Just a light demo, give the kids a laugh. John's eyes settled on the man. Calm, unblinking. Not my style, he said. We'll be heading out. Tyler turned slightly, addressing the room like a showman. It's always the quiet ones. Think they're tougher than they look. Let's see if there's any bite behind that drawl. The room chuckled nervously. John didn't move. Emily's grip tightened on his sleeve. And then Tyler said it. Let's show the difference between trained fighters and, well, regular old guys. The dojo fell still. Emily's eyes pleaded. With him. John looked at her, then at the kids, the parents, the instructors, all caught between discomfort and curiosity. Then he stepped forward. One condition, he said quietly. Tyler raised a brow. When it's over, you apologize. To your students for turning this place into a sideshow. Tyler burst out laughing, clapping his hands. Deal, old man. John took off his jacket slowly. His arms, lean but strong, flexed gently as he moved. He handed the coat to Emily without a word and stepped toward the mat. One foot, then the other. Storm was coming. Sometimes, John said, rolling up his sleeves with quiet certainty, you don't choose the fight, but you do choose how it ends. The room held its breath. John Kennedy stood in the center of the mat, calm and composed, surrounded by a quiet storm of tension. Children sat cross-legged near the edge. Teens whispered to each other in hushed awe. Parents leaned forward in their chairs, unsure if they were about to witness a spar or a spectacle. Tyler Garrison cracked his neck with exaggerated flair, pacing like a lion preparing to pounce. You sure you're good to go, sir? He asked. With a grin. We do have a first aid kit. John simply nodded. Just light contact, right? Of course, Tyler replied, smirking. Wouldn't want to hurt anybody. He raised his voice for the crowd. This is just a friendly lesson. A reminder why training matters. Watch your distance, stay sharp, and don't blink. More nervous laughter from the edges of the mat. Emily stood off to the side, biting her lips so hard it turned white. Her eyes darted between her father and her instructor. She knew John was strong, but she didn't know how strong. Not really. No one did. Tyler bowed stiffly. John mirrored it, fluid, respectful, deep. A bow from someone who meant it. Then the space. Between them became still. No commands. No referee. Just two men. One trying to make a point. The other trying to prove nothing. Tyler struck first. A fast jab, sharp and tight textbook. Aimed cleanly at John's chest. But John wasn't there. He shifted. Just enough. Like a leaf riding the breeze. turning what should have been a clean hit into a swing through air. The momentum threw Tyler slightly off balance. He reset quickly, throwing a roundhouse kick aimed mid-thigh. John dipped his weight, body angling, absorbing the motion with minimal movement. His eyes never blinked. His breathing never changed. His feet barely left the floor. The audience began to murmur. He didn't even flinch. Did he just dodge that without moving? Tyler pressed harder. 3 jabs in succession, and a hook toward the ribs. All clean, all fast, all practiced, but none connected. John moved like he was in a different rhythm, like he was hearing music no one else could. Every punch Tyler threw landed inches away. Every strike deflected not with force, but with feel. Wasn't fighting. He was guiding the fight, redirecting energy, not absorbing it. By the 3rd sequence, sweat started to bead on Tyler's forehead. He masked it with a grin. "You're slippery, I'll give you that." John said nothing. He adjusted, his footing again more centered this time. Tyler didn't notice the change, but the instructors watching from the sideline did. One of them leaned to another and whispered, "That's not beginner stance." Tyler charged forward again, throwing a flurry of strikes, elbows, knees, quick feet combinations, all fast, all powerful. And John glided. Weaved. Stepped just out of range. Never countered, never hit back. But each time Tyler missed, the room grew quieter. The energy shifted away from mockery toward disbelief. He's not even trying. This guy's not new. Emily stared in stunned silence. She had always seen her foster dad as calm, kind, reliable. But now, she was watching something else, something unshakable. Tyler, now breathing heavier, pulled back and raised a hand. "Okay," he said with a short laugh. "You're quick, but let's see if you can take a hit." He dropped low, swept his leg wide in a spinning kick, a move meant to knock John off his feet. But before it connected, John stepped forward. Into the sweep. A dangerous move, except it wasn't a in one fluid motion. John closed the distance and stopped the sweep mid-spin by gently pressing his hand against Tyler's shoulder, off balancing him just enough to disrupt the technique without ever hurting him. Tyler stumbled. Gasps echoed from around the room. John stepped back, still no fists thrown, still no contact made, except one, a whisper of a touch. But it said everything. Tyler reset, red-faced now, panting more than he wanted to admit. One student muttered, "He's tiring him out," without doing anything. Another whispered, "That's control. That's mastery." The teens weren't laughing anymore. The parents weren't amused anymore. They were watching something else now. A lesson unfold. Tyler's eyes darted briefly toward the viewing area. He saw the faces concerned, confused, curious. He saw the kids who once admired him now looking elsewhere. He snapped back. He wasn't about to be humiliated by an old man in jeans. No way. No chance. With a growl of effort, he lunged forward, arms raised in a wide arc, reckless, now aiming to clinch, to overpower, to end this. John moved. Sidestepped. One angle, one simple redirect with his palm. Tyler missed completely. His body twisted off balance and landed hard, knees slapping against the mat. Palms skidding. Silence. Tyler pushed himself up quickly, face red, breathing hard. John stood a few feet away, hands still at his sides. Then he spoke. Only 4 words. "I'm not your enemy." It hit harder than any punch. Tyler's eyes narrowed. "Fight me for real." John looked at him for a moment. "Why?" The room held still again. "Because they're watching." Tyler snapped, pointing to the crowd. "Because they need to see why discipline matters." John took a slow breath. "And what have you shown them so far?" Tyler froze. The question lingered, heavy, Exposed. John looked around, slowly turning toward the watching parents, the whispering students, the concerned instructors. Then back to Tyler. "You're not teaching right now," he said, voice soft but unmistakable. "You're performing. And they all see it." For the first time, Tyler blinked. Unsure. Unsure of the next move, unsure of himself. He took one more step forward, raised his fists, but there was hesitation. John saw it and stepped closer. This time he raised a single hand, not in defense, not in a strike, but open, calm, no shame in learning. John said, "Only in refusing to." Tyler looked at the hand, then at the crowd, then at the mat beneath him, and then he swung. A wide, desperate hook. John ducked. Quick, clean, silent, and this time he touched back, a single gentle palm against Tyler's chest. Not to push, but to stop him. Mid swing. And with that, Tyler stumbled again, backward, off balance, his foot slipping just enough to send him tumbling to one knee. It wasn't violent. It wasn't dramatic, but it was clear, unmistakably clear. He was outmatched, and not because of strength. Because of control, because of restraint. The room erupted in hushed awe. Emily's hands clutched her heart. Wide-eyed. John stepped back, his hands still open, calm as ever. Tyler didn't get up right away, and he didn't speak, because something inside him finally broke. Not out of defeat, but realization. The storm had passed, but something bigger was brewing. Not outside. Inside him. Tyler stayed on one knee, not because he couldn't rise, but because, for the first time in years, he didn't know how to stand without ego. The dojo was utterly still. Tyler remained kneeling on one knee, eyes down, chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. But it wasn't exhaustion anymore, not fully. Something else weighed him down, something heavier than fatigue. It was recognition. Across from him, John Kennedy stood like still water, quiet, unshaken, and deeply present. He didn't speak. He didn't gloat. He simply waited. Tyler slowly lifted his gaze. His smirk was gone. His fists had lowered. All that remained was a flush of red across his face, a sheen of sweat on his brow, and the look of a man realizing for the first time he might not be the smartest, strongest, or most respected man in the room. He rose to his feet slowly, wiping his palms against his GI pants. "You didn't even hit me," he said, voice low. John tilted his head slightly. "Didn't need to?" Tyler blinked, as if expecting a follow-up. There wasn't one. That was the lesson. The silence between them deepened. Then from the sideline a voice broke it. "Dad?" Emily's voice cut through the tension like a soft breeze after a storm. She stepped forward cautiously, unsure whether to smile or cry. John turned to her and smiled gently. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded. That was incredible." John's smile barely widened. "It wasn't a fight." She stepped closer. "Then what was it?" He looked around at the circle of young faces, at the kids who had just seen their confident, commanding instructor unraveled without a single punch. "A reminder," he said simply. A murmur ran through the crowd. Tyler took a breath, then another. He turned to face his students, his voice shaky but audible. I owe all of you an apology." The room stilled again. "I let my ego run this place. I tried to prove something instead of teach something." His eyes dropped to the mat, then back up. "I forgot what martial arts is really about." There was a beat of silence, then soft claps, not loud, not forced. Just a few students, a few parents, acknowledging what took far more strength than NEKTA. John gave him a small nod, but Tyler wasn't finished, his brow furrowed, confusion crossing his face again. But who are you? John hesitated. This was the part of his story he didn't like to share. He sighed gently, stepping off the mat and pulling his jacket back over his shoulders. I'm just Emily's dad, he said. Emily's voice spoke up behind him, but this time it carried weight. No, she said clearly. Tell them. John looked at her, and she held his gaze. This wasn't for pride. It was for truth. And she needed them to hear it. So he turned back around. I trained for most of my life, he said softly. Traditional karate. Started young, advanced quickly, competed internationally, reached a rank few ever do. Gasps rippled through the students. Then I walked away. Tyler's eyebrows rose. Why would you walk away from that? John smiled faintly. Because being good at something doesn't mean you have to make it your whole life. I wanted to raise a child. I wanted peace. He glanced at Emily. And I found it. There was a long pause. Some students started Googling on their phones. Within seconds, whispers spread like wildfire. Wait, he's in articles from the 90s. He beat 2 national champions in a single weekend. He trained under Nakamura in Okinawa. Emily stepped beside him, glowing with pride. He never told me all of that. Not until today. But I've always known who he was. Tyler took a step forward, humbler now. You could have embarrassed me, destroyed me out there. John looked at him. I didn't come here to fight. Tyler looked down again. I was trying to prove I was strong. You are strong, John said firmly. But strength without humility is just noise. Tyler's jaw clenched. His mind was spinning. His breath trembled. He had built this dojo into something respected, structured. But today he'd seen it shaken by a man who never even raised his fists. He turned back to his students. Everything he just did, that's what I should have been showing you all along. The students nodded. Some even looked emotional. 12-year-old girl in the front row wiped her eyes and whispered, he didn't need power to be powerful. Tyler gave a small, broken laugh. And I thought I was teaching that. John placed a gentle hand on Tyler's shoulder. You still can. That night, the dojo didn't end in formal bow-outs or push-ups or belt drills. It ended in a quiet, unplanned circle. Parents, students, instructors all gathered as John answered questions, told stories about his early training, the teachers who had shaped him, and the losses that taught him more than the wins. He didn't brag. He reflected. Emily sat beside him the whole time, her pride quiet but radiant. Tyler didn't say much more. He just listened, truly listened. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like a student again. Asterisk. As the crowd began to leave, one parent whispered to another, this place changed. Tonight. Tyler looked toward the empty mat, eyes glistening, and quietly asked, would you come back and teach them? It had been a week since the day the dojo fell silent. A week since the lesson no one had expected, but none could forget. In that time, the whispers had turned into conversations, conversations into reflection, and reflection into action. Tyler, Garrison had changed, not completely, not overnight, but visibly. The swagger was still there, just quieter. The commands still firm, but gentler. The criticism more careful. His tone now held something it lacked before, respect. And it wasn't just him. The students had changed too. You could see it in the way they trained. They weren't just trying to hit harder or win faster. They were paying attention, breathing, slower, watching each other with new eyes. Tyler had made one big change no one expected. He invited John Kennedy back, not as a guest, as a teacher. I know it's a long shot, Tyler had said that night after everyone left. But I meant what I asked. Come back, teach them, even if it's just once a week. John had looked down for a long moment. His answer wasn't automatic. I stepped away from all this for a reason, he had said quietly. The trophies, the titles, they started to mean less to me than the time I was missing at home. I made peace with that choice. Tyler nodded. And I respect it. But this dojo, it needs that peace, even just a little. John didn't give an answer then. But the following Saturday, as students gathered for their usual training, the glass door opened, and there he was. Same plaid shirt, same worn boots, same calm eyes. Emily by his side, and the room lit up. He didn't wear a uniform, didn't carry a belt. He didn't need to. Tyler greeted him first, bowing not out of formality, but out of genuine gratitude. I'll be in the back, observing, Tyler said. Today, it's your floor. John stepped onto the mat slowly. Students adjusted their gis. The room fell silent. Everyone sat up straighter. He looked around at them. Some young, some teenagers, a couple even older than Tyler, all waiting for a lesson. He didn't begin with a kata or a speech. He asked a question. What do you think makes a great martial artist? Hands raised. Discipline, speed, control, power. He nodded gently at each answer. All true, he said. But all of that can still come from ego, from wanting to be the best, wanting to dominate. He paused. Do you want to know what I believe makes a great martial artist? The room leaned in. Character. He let the words settle. Not what you show when you're winning, but what you show when you're tested. He walked slowly along the edge of the mats, voice soft but unwavering. When someone mocks you, how do you respond? When you're stronger than someone, do you protect them or use it against them? When no one's looking, do you still do the right thing? He stopped near a group of teens. I've seen black belts who couldn't control their temper. I've seen beginners with more humility than champions. And I've seen instructors forget that students are always watching. Tyler nodded quietly from the back. John continued, a belt shows where you are, not who you are. And if you ever forget that. He paused, then smiled gently. You'll miss the real lesson. For the next hour, he taught basics, not flashy. Moves. Not spinning kicks. Just balance. BREATHWORK. Mindful movement. And the room was captivated. Even Tyler stepped in, asking John for clarification mid-drill, earning smiles from students who had never seen their instructor ask anyone for help. After class, a small girl from the beginner group approached John timidly. Mr. Kennedy, can I be strong like you one day? He knelt to her level, smiled, and said, You already are. Strength isn't in how hard you hit. It's in how much kindness you carry when you don't need to show it. She beamed and ran off. Emily watched the whole exchange from the doorway. She didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. This was the man who raised her. This was the man the world was finally seeing. Later, as the dojo emptied and the mats were cleaned, Tyler stood beside John, arms folded. I want to run this place differently now, Tyler admitted. Less yelling, more listening, more this. John looked around. You built this place. It just needed a little tuning. Tyler turned to him. Will you stay? Make this official? Co-instructor? John chuckled. I'm not here for titles. Anymore. Tyler smiled. Then, mentor? John thought for a second and nodded once. I can do that. That evening, as John and Emily walked to the truck under the golden hues of sunset, Emily looked up at him. I didn't know you still had all that in you. John smiled softly. I didn't either. Not until I had to remember. She leaned against him as they walked. I think you reminded a lot of people. He looked at her and nodded. Then it was worth it. They climbed into the truck. The engine hummed to life. As they pulled away, John glanced once in the rearview mirror, watching the dojo fade behind them. But he knew something had changed. Inside those walls, not just for Tyler, not just for the students, but for him too. He had thought he left that chapter behind. Turns out, it was just waiting for the right page to turn. Asterisk, some lessons aren't taught by breaking boards, but by breaking silence. And that day, John Kennedy taught more with stillness than most do in a lifetime.